Welcome to the stability and mobility unit of your program. This is block 4 and it's a progression of the stability and mobility exercises we've been doing in the last few blocks. As I've always said, stability and mobility coexist within your sport. So it very much depends on the individual whether a stability exercise or a mobility exercise is most appropriate for you. But in this instance, we're going to talk a lot about the lateral hip and lateral movements. So I would suggest that you do all the stability and all the mobility in this phase and then find out which one suits you best. So we're going to talk first on the stability element of the lateral hip. So the first exercise that we have is called a hip flexion inner range. So you need a wall or something to stabilize yourself. What you do is you lift one leg up above 90 degrees, so stabilize yourself in position, and then you slightly internally rotate your foot to get that inner range of the psoas muscle of your hip. So we want to stabilize and strengthen this area. I'm going to hold for 15 seconds, maintaining that good position. If you feel like the hips drop or hinge up, then that's the wrong position. All these exercises are about positioning yourself in the right position and then try and drive that movement. So this 15-second hold should accompany a nice straight pelvis, a level pelvis, so there isn't a hip hinge left or right. Nice straight pelvis, and then from there you drive the motion into hip flexion and then into rotation. So holding that position again for 15 seconds. You're going to do each one 3 times, so 45 seconds each side in total. And make sure you're in a nice good position. You're also looking and feeling at the back there. You're not extending the back. You're remaining in that nice neutral position and then driving the motion from there. This will strengthen the exercise that often get neglected, and you need to position. The reason why the hip getting into the right position is so important is that if it isn't, you're not isolating the muscles that we wanted, which is the glute med, which is the muscle as one of the glute muscles, but it's on the outside of your hip, and we want to focus on that area. This is obviously more iliopsoas in the front, but we're targeting those medial and lateral hip hip stabilizers. So again, you do 3 times round, 15 seconds on each one, and maintaining a good posture. It's very easy to lose that posture of the hips, that alignment of the hips. So you can, like Sandra's doing, is palpating the bony elements of your hip, and then make sure they're in line. So if you find up you're rotating on one side, you can stop, stabilize yourself, and then try and get into that nice position where you're in that straight line out from the hip, and then you're getting into that nice rotation position. So it's the last repetition here, 15 seconds. Again, just another common flaw might be the bottom foot starts to externally rotate. You want that foot nice and straight on the back foot, even though it's not the most important limb in this exercise, but it's important that your setup is nice and strong and in line, and then you can drive good motion. Okay, good stuff. Okay, we're on to the next exercise, which is called the hip hinge. Quite difficult to do. I struggle with this. That's why Sandra's doing it and not me. So you need to set up, there's 3 sequences to this movement. So you set up a cage or something to stabilize yourself. So again, we want to try and drive good movement. So we need something to stabilize yourself. So your hand is on, your opposite hand goes up, or your foot first, whatever you want to do. So hand up, foot up, and then the hip hinge. This is the hard part. So you're going to rotate using the muscles of the glute med to get that hip into that hip hinge position or hip hitch position. So again, so we go down to the start, we're going to do 8 reps of this. So if you put your hand down again, Sandra, so we'll just go, or the other one, yeah, so hand up, foot up, and then hip up. Good. So you lock in that position, that's very good control of movement, and then back down again, and everything comes down in sequence again. So 8 repetitions on that side. We'll just do 1 or 2 more reps. So hand up, foot up, hip up. Good, last rep. Good. Okay. Last exercise on your stability is the lying leg raise. So 3 different points of contact here. It's very important, again, like we're saying again, if you just look at the skeleton here, we're trying to keep this pelvis in line. So if that moves or that rotates, it affects the outside of the hip is what we're looking to strengthen or stabilize from here. So the back foot is kind of remain tucked in and away out of the movement. You're going to keep your pelvis in line, so it's a nice straight line from your body. Lie down as flat as you can, and you're going to do, the contact here is the full foot. If we start internally rotating the foot or externally rotating the foot, it's going to change the complexity of the muscles engaged here. So we want to just go flat contact, and then we want to go as far forward as we can, and then make the contact against the floor, and then come back as far as we can to make that contact on the third contact. So there's 3 contacts, 3 times, so 9 repetitions. Again, she could push that a lot further, Sandra could push that a lot further, but what will happen is it'll overcompensate and you won't get the desired effect here. So it's not about maximum range forward, it's about good range forward, keeping that integrity of the hip. So make sure everything's aligned, something doesn't rotate. So getting maximum effort here is not what we're looking for. We're trying to get good control of the pelvis and then good control of the femur and tibia, obviously going through motion here. So touch of the foot on the back, middle and forward. 3 repetitions, 3 times, it'll be 9 reps, and then change and do the other side. Okay, so there's the stability sort of signs of the lateral hip. It may look easy on the surface, but quite challenging if you can get the hip in the right position. So now we're going to mobilize. So you can do mobilize first, the stability second, or vice versa. It really does depend on how your makeup is. So the first one is a glute med stretch, right? So you need, again, a wall for this. So what we're going to do is have one leg behind. So the one that's closest to the wall is straight. The one behind here is just for stability. And I would suggest you move your foot out away from the wall a little bit. Yeah, so back again, but away from the wall. So there, that's perfect, right? So there's a bit of slack taken up in the body, and then all she's trying to do then is slide the hip towards the wall. The elbows in contact, again, just in line with herself, and then the hand is out to stabilize herself. And then all she's doing is she's shifting the pelvis. So the pelvis is going left and right. If you find this quite easy, what you can do is just take a step out from the wall. So all you're looking for here is that the hip slides in translation towards the wall, and everything else sort of remains still. So really that hand where it's fixated here is to try and assist the hip towards the wall. If you see the slight rotation here, like externally or internal rotation, try and fix yourself, get some feedback from someone who can look at you, and just make sure the hip is sliding left and right, and it's going towards the wall as much as you can, and you feel that glute med in a nice deep stretch there. If you feel that compensation, there's a slight rotation of the hips, a slight turn out, so the body's trying to get out of the movement and not load up that lateral hip as much. So you really have to work on just sliding yourself towards the wall. Okay, on to the next exercise then. So a bit more functional now. We're going to go into a kneeling position. So that's quite good in the first instance. Now it's a bit more complexity. So here again, the hip, again, the position of the hip is so important. We're taking a step forward to take out some slap into hip extension of the left side, and then leaning ourselves to the right, but also using our hands to drive that motion. You see, you get more leverage and you get more pushing out of that right hip when you get the hands involved. So you're going to have a top down driver and sort of a bottom up driver from the foot. So the motion here is driven from both the top and the bottom to try and get that hip to move across. Now, what you want is the hip to move across in line. You don't want it to come down too much or up too much. You want it to slide across as much as you can. So feel the sliding, the translation of the hip to our left and then back to our right again. That's what we're looking for. And the last exercise I want you to do is trying to drive all this into more functionality. And the most function we can get is a lunge in this instance. So you're going to lunge forward again. Setup is important here, so a bit wider on your foot position. You're going to lunge forward and lean at the same time. So lunging and leaning over that side. So again, it's the side you want the hip to fly out to the side with control, of course, and you want to lean that side. You don't want to lean the other way because we get the opposite effect. So try the other side if you want on this one. So stepping with your left foot and then leaning onto that side. You have one side that's maybe better than the other, but the same principles apply. Again, just 6 repetitions on this. All the reps and sets will be up on a PDF if I haven't mentioned it throughout. But 6 repetitions on your left, 6 repetitions on your right. And what Sandra's doing here is she's doing it in sequence. So she's not just getting there down and then rotating, she's rotating as she's falling into the movement, which is what we're looking for on that lateral hip. That's your stability and mobility exercises for the lateral hip. Very good to put into your program, stuff that's quite neglected and can cause problems as you progress. So make sure you integrate some of these into your program. I'd like this for you to trial all of the mobility and all the stability, and as you go through and you get more familiar with the exercises, you'll figure out which one is best for you moving forward. Hope you enjoyed it. See you again soon.